The rain came down in relentless sheets, drumming against the tin roof of the porch as Anna stood there, her arms wrapped tightly around a worn leather bag that held all she could carry. Her husband's voice still echoed in her ears, sharp and cruel, a command that felt like a final blow. "Go live in that shack," he had shouted, his eyes blazing with the kind of anger she had grown used to, but which still pierced her deeper than any blade. She hadn't fought back this time. She hadn't begged him to calm down. She hadn't even tried to reason with him. Instead, she had simply nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat, and walked toward the direction he had pointed. The shack. That broken, forgotten structure that leaned precariously at the far edge of their land like it was waiting for the wind to knock it down for good. Each step she took toward it felt heavier than the last, her shoes sinking into the mud as the rain plastered her hair to her face. The storm matched the turmoil inside her chest. The night seemed to mock her, lightning flashing briefly to show her the outline of her exile, a small, crooked shack with half of its boards rotted away. The windows were cracked, one of them hanging by a nail, swinging in the wind with a high-pitched squeal. The door, swollen from years of neglect and damp, groaned as she pushed against it. For a moment, she thought it would refuse her, as if even this place of ruin did not want her inside. But with a sudden snap, it gave way, and she stumbled forward into the darkness. The air inside was heavy with the stench of mold and damp wood, thick enough to make her gag. Dust swirled in the beam of her candle lighter as she fumbled to set her bag down. Her breath echoed in the silence, mingling with the dripping of water leaking through the holes in the roof. Her shoes squelched on the warped wooden floor. This was her new home. Not the warm house she had cleaned and cared for, not the place she had once dreamed of filling with laughter and love, but this, four sagging walls and a roof that seemed ready to cave in. She let her back slide down one of the walls until she sat on the splintered floorboards, hugging her knees tightly to her chest. A broken chair leaned against the far wall, its leg snapped clean through. A blanket, moth-eaten and stiff, lay crumpled in one corner, evidence that perhaps the shack had once sheltered someone long before her. She ran her fingers through her wet hair, trying to catch her breath, trying to silence the tremors that ran through her body. The tears came without her permission, hot and endless, dripping onto her sleeves. She tried to muffle her sobs, but the silence of the shack only seemed to magnify them, bouncing her grief back at her in waves. Her husband's words wouldn't leave her mind. Not just tonight's words, but all of them, the insults, the accusations, the way he had chipped away at her spirit piece by piece. And yet, she had stayed. She had clung to the hope that things might change, that the man she once loved might come back. But tonight was different. Tonight he had drawn a line and shoved her across it, casting her out like she was nothing. She looked around at the crumbling room and felt the sharp sting of humiliation. This was where he believed she belonged, alone, discarded, in the ruins of something that used to matter. A gust of wind rattled the loose boards, making the shack creak like it was groaning in sympathy. She pulled her thin sweater tighter around her, shivering. The candlelighter in her hand flickered out, leaving her in near darkness except for the occasional flash of lightning through the cracked window. She listened to the storm, its fury a strange comfort. At least the storm did not lie. At least the rain and the thunder did. Not pretend to love her, only to break her down later. In the dim light, she noticed a spider crawling across the floor, disappearing into a gap between the boards. She thought of how even spiders built homes stronger than this one, weaving threads that held against the wind. She envied it, that fragile strength. She pulled her bag into her lap and opened it. Inside were only the barest essentials, a change of clothes, a photograph of her mother, a half-empty wallet. She pressed the photograph to her chest, closing her eyes as if the memory of her mother's kind face could shield her from the despair that threatened to swallow her whole. The night stretched on, each minute dragging with aching slowness. At some point, exhaustion overtook her tears, and she curled up on the floor, her cheek pressed against the rough wood. The roof dripped steadily beside her, the sound like a clock ticking away time. She thought of how her life had led her here, to this moment, and wondered if she had been a fool to stay as long as she had. Yet beneath the ache of betrayal, a tiny ember of resolve began to flicker. The shack might be falling apart, but she was not. Not completely. Not yet. She sat up again, wiping her face with her sleeve. The shadows danced on the walls as lightning illuminated the room once more. It was then she noticed something strange about the floor beneath her, A section of it seemed slightly raised, as if the wood had shifted or warped differently than the rest. She frowned, running her hand across the uneven plank. Her fingers paused. A loose floorboard. She pressed against it, and it moved. Her breath caught in her throat. Suddenly, the suffocating darkness of the shack didn't feel quite the same. It was still broken, still cold, still a place meant to punish her, but perhaps it held more than just despair. Perhaps it held a secret. And for the first time that night, Anna felt her heart beat with something other than grief. It beat with curiosity, with possibility. She froze there in the silence, staring at the floor, wondering what this place truly was, and why fate had led her into it. The storm had quieted by the time Anna lit the stub of a candle she found buried in her bag. Its small flame cast a trembling glow over the shack, pushing back the shadows just enough for her to see the outlines of the decayed walls and scattered debris. She rose slowly, her knees stiff from the hours spent curled up on the cold floor, and began to wander the room with cautious steps. The candlelight flickered across spiderwebs draped like curtains in the corners, their delicate strands glittering faintly. The air smelled of damp earth, rot, and something faintly metallic. Each creak of the boards beneath her feet made her flinch, as though the entire shack might collapse around her. She told herself she was only trying to pass the time, to distract her mind from the bitterness of the night. But deep down, she was searching for something, anything, that would make this place less unbearable. Her hand trailed across the wall, fingers brushing over rough wood, nails catching in grooves cut long ago. This shack, forgotten and discarded, had a story of its own. And in some strange way, Anna needed to know it. Her foot pressed down near the center of the floor, and she heard a faint shift. She froze, glancing down. At first she thought it was just another creak, the natural complaint of old wood under weight. But when she pressed her foot again, the plank beneath it moved ever so slightly, rising at one corner. Her heart gave a startled jump. She knelt, holding the candle close, and ran her hand over the floor. Yes, one of the boards was loose, different from the rest. Her pulse quickened as she slipped her nails into the gap, tugging. The wood resisted at first, swollen from years of moisture, but with a firm pull it lifted free, groaning like it resented being disturbed. Dust rose in a cloud, making her cough. Beneath the floorboard was a hollow space, and in it lay a small box, square and metal, its surface eaten with rust. The sight of it made her freeze, her breath caught halfway in her throat. She reached down with trembling hands, lifting the box from its hiding place. It was heavier than she expected, weighty in a way that spoke of importance. She placed it carefully on the floor in front of her, the candlelight glinting faintly off its corroded surface. A lock, though badly rusted, held it shut. She traced the outline of the box with her fingertips, feeling the chill of the metal seep into her skin. For a long moment she simply stared, her thoughts spinning. Who had hidden this here? Why? The shack had stood for years, abandoned and left to decay. Could this box have been waiting all this time? And what would her husband say if he knew she had found it? A surge of dread ran through her at the thought. He had sent her here with spite, certain she would suffer. What if he knew about this and wanted to keep it hidden? The rain outside had softened into a gentle patter, but inside the shack Anna's heartbeat sounded loud, insistent. She tried the lock, pulling at it with her hands. It clung stubbornly, refusing to yield. She bit her lip, frustration sparking in her chest. For years she had obeyed, stayed quiet, endured whatever came her way. And now here was this, something locked, something secret, something perhaps never meant for her. But hadn't everything else been taken from her? Hadn't she been thrown aside like trash? A surge of defiance warmed her veins. If fate had placed this box in her path, then she would not turn away from it. She searched the shack for anything she could use. In the corner she found a bent piece of iron, rusted but sharp at one end. With determination tightening her jaw, she jammed the makeshift tool into the lock, prying and twisting. The metal screeched in protest, the sound echoing through the hollow space of the shack. She winced, but pressed harder, sweat beading on her forehead. At last, with a snap that rang out louder than the thunder had hours before, the lock broke free and clattered onto the floor. Anna stared at the box, her breath coming in quick, shallow bursts. Her fingers shook as she lifted the lid. It creaked open slowly, revealing its contents. Inside, wrapped in layers of faded cloth, were bundles of papers, yellowed with age. She pulled one out and unfolded it carefully. Her eyes widened. It was a document, a deed, written in formal script, bearing names and signatures she did not recognize. She sifted further, finding more papers, bank slips, letters, and what looked like official seals. At the bottom, tucked away beneath the papers, was a smaller pouch. She opened it and nearly gasped. Coins, old, heavy, and gleaming faintly even through the tarnish. Her hands trembled so badly she almost dropped them. Wealth, hidden here, beneath her feet, in the place her husband had exiled her to as punishment. Her mind raced with questions. Had someone once lived here and left their fortune behind? Had her husband known? Was this why he had sent her here, not just to humiliate her, but to keep her away from something he didn't want her to find? She hugged the pouch to her chest, her heart pounding. For the first time in years, she felt something stirring inside her that wasn't fear or sorrow. It was hope, and power. Power she had never held before. The shack no longer seemed like a ruin meant to break her spirit. It was a vault, a keeper of secrets, and it had chosen her to discover them. Anna closed the box carefully. Her mind already forming plans. She would not tell him. She would not tell anyone, not yet. This secret was hers, and hers alone. She blew out the candle and sat in the darkness, clutching the pouch tightly, listening as the rain faded into silence. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed, announcing dawn. A new day. A different day. And as the first light crept through the cracked window, Anna's lips curved into the faintest smile. Her husband had sent her to the shack to break her, but instead, he had unknowingly set her free.